Section 5.1, measuring length in the English and metric systems. The overarching theme in the entire chapter is the concept of dimensional analysis, and that's when you go from one unit to another unit. We basically will be approaching every single one pretty much the same way, except where there's a formula, which is later on in the chapter. In 5.1, we deal with length, so we're in the first dimension. In 5.2, we deal with area and volume, so the second and third dimension respectively. Next slide. I said next slide. Why aren't you next sliding? Oh, there we go. Did I skip a slide? No, we're good. All right, I was right. Okay, so let's start off with length in the English system. So you should know pretty much all these. 12 inches at a foot, 3 feet in a yard, 36 inches in a yard, 52 feet in a mile. Please notice the abbreviations. The big one is mile, M-I. Don't write just M, because M means something else. And this is just a nerd fact for those grammar nerds out there. We put periods at the end of the English system measurements. When we get to metric, we don't put periods, unfortunately. Now, do want to say, notice the system we use here in America, and there's 2 other countries, is the English system. This is what Britain used many, many years ago. Well, in the middle of 1900s, there was a vote in America to change to the metric system, and it got shot down. So if that were the case, we would not even need this chapter, because we'd all be on the same page across the world. So call up your grandparents now and be like, why did you say no? Well, there you go. All right, so these are the lengths for the English system. By the way, most of these boxes that appear in this video and the next videos for chapter 5 will also be given to you on the test. Just know how to use them. Speaking of how to use them, we're going to use what is called a unit fraction to convert from one unit to another. A unit fraction is a fraction, really, whose value equals 1. Since we know that 12 inches is 1 foot, then I could write the unit fraction 12 inches divided by 1 foot. And since this numerator has the same value as the denominator, then those would just equal 1. Now, technically, if I wrote 1 foot over 12 inches, it's the same, it also equals 1. However, you want to pick your unit fraction in such a way that, as we're going to see, things cancel correctly. For an example of that, oh wait, no, I lied to you. That's the next slide. So to use a unit fraction to convert, we're going to multiply the given information, so I might say like 2.35 inches, by the correct unit fraction in order to cancel out the unit that you want to go from, but leave the unit that you want to go to. For our problems, remember when multiplying fractions, typically you can cancel diagonally and up and down, but for our purposes, we're only going to be canceling diagonally. The up and down doesn't really exist. It doesn't happen for our style problems. Now that little paragraph might not make a lick of sense, which is totally fine. That's why on the next page I've got an example. I was waiting for it. There it goes. Okay. So if we wanted to convert 30 inches to feet, that means the given information is 30 inches. And we can have 2 unit fractions that relate inches and feet. 12 inches per 1 foot or 1 foot per 12 inches. Only one of these will work. The reason we would pick the second one is because, look at the last line, 30 inches is the same thing as 30 inches over 1. And so if we multiply that by the unit fraction 1 foot per 12 inches, what happens to the inches? They cancel. So if we had picked the first unit fraction, 12 inches per 1 foot, the inches would not have canceled, and we would have ended up with something horrible. It would have been 30 inches times 12 inches is technically 360 square inches per 1 foot. That's terrible. We don't want that at all. And that means instead of having the unit of just being feet, we would have inches per square foot. Oh no, inches per foot. That's even worse. Terrible. So one more time. You pick the unit fraction so that things cancel diagonally. Since inches is on top, then the unit fraction needs to have inches on bottom, so those cancel. And once they cancel, notice we're left with just feet. So 30 times 1 is 30. 1 times 12 is 12. 30 over 12 feet is 2.5 feet. So that is how 90% of the problems in this chapter will work. We will be canceling using a unit fraction. I lied, it's more like 89%. So if you would, please watch the first video, Converting English Lengths.